Welcome to another episode. Today we're filming in Hong Kong, and I'm here today with documentary maker Sam Sky Wild. Thanks for being with us here tonight, Sam.
No, you're welcome.
So let's jump right into it. What is your documentary making history?
Well, the way that I got interested or involved in documentary making was during the protests against the G8 in Genoa in July 2001, and until that point I'd never really been interested or involved in documentary making. I had always been a print journalist, working both for mainstream media for wages and then also for underground indie media, DIY media, street level media if you like, for politics, for personal motivation. And then by serendipity really, I ended up getting involved in this project about making a film about the massive protest, including during which a protester was killed. And myself and a friend got a bit of funding for it, involved going back to Italy a couple of times and worked with a big group of other filmmakers in a collaborative project and made the film Genoa Red Zone. And that, as a result of that, I learned how to edit really and how to begin to produce films and what kind of goes into them, and the whole process was demystified, if you like, during that. And on the back of that film, we got that film into the Venice Film Festival of 2002. Then I just once I'd got my head around how cameras worked and Final Cut Pro editing software and stuff, just begun to make things myself. I then moved to Italy, Switzerland, the Italian part of Switzerland, and made a film about wolves returning naturally to Switzerland. And during that process, everything's like just a giant learning curve really. And because I also had a bit of a love affair with Italy, which wore off when I lived there, because it's not quite as romantic a place to live as you might think it is, as one might think it is. Then I came back to the UK in 2005, did a MA in documentary making, which all of my documentary making really, outside of a few chancy bits of funding, have all been funded primarily by the work that I do as a print journalist and as a production journalist, what you could call production journalist, working on the web or doing layout in newspapers. So that's my bread and butter work, and for that I get paid. But I haven't been able to really make the documentary films work in terms of them being able to employ me. Anyway, so I did my MA, paid for that as well, and then and during that period made a film about the gentrification of Washington DC, which is a very black city, and it was called Chocolate City, so is the film, for a long period of time, because the city was about 90% black. And it had therefore a really unique and interesting, vibrant culture. But of course, in the middle of this black city, all of these, basically the institutes of democracy in the United States, which are principally run by white people and are white in colour. So it's an interesting city like that. But now the city's being being pretty heavily gentrified, and the city's losing a lot of its character and soul. So a friend of mine and I made a film about that. And then when I came to Hong Kong, I was working for a news agency here and used that again to fund a film about Hong Kong and what's happening here in terms of the democratic and the economic inequalities that exist in this city. There you go.
So you have a master's in documentary making, but is it necessary to go the more educational route, or can you just jump right into it?
In a way, I think it's like the media for me has always been one of those things that, certainly in the British case anyway, that is very much, I think there are many doors into the institutions that exist there. Some you push on and they don't open, and some you push on and they do. I think for me, the way I got into it was both documentary making. I came at it from a more formal academic side once I did my MA, but with a bit of my own DIY learning on the way. But as I say, I've never made that a financially successful operation. Journalism, on the other hand, I totally went in like just as a freelancer. Started writing articles, knocking on doors, getting in touch with editors, and ended up getting a series of skills that involved web editing and also sub-editing at a period when the web was beginning to emerge as a new force within the media, and that just put me in the right place at the right time, and had a few friends and contacts here and there, so that eventually I was able to make a living doing that. But I mean, other people on the other hand go the more formal route and maybe do more reporting and everything, and maybe that, I think that also works, you know what I mean? But persistence, I think everybody will say that persistence is a thing that pays off, and also the desire to do it, you know what I mean? If you're interested in using journalism for whatever reason, for me it's because I think it's part of the process it's part of the democratic process. That's what motivates me to do it, that's what makes me interested in it. I think it's part of a massive discussion that's going on in society all the time, and hopefully with as much information as can be there as is possible. So that's what motivated me to do it, and that's what drove me. But I think as long as people have the drive and the motivation and the persistence, it will often pay off, but not always.
Now, most of us only see the final product, but how much work goes into a documentary? How much behind the scenes is going on?
I think it depends on the way in which you decide to make the film. You could come at the films that I've made until recently, Hong Kong being the first one, which is different. All of the other films I did are what you could call, I guess, fly on the wall, you know, very observational. The Genoa film, for example, we had 160 hours of footage. That was footage from different people from all around the world who had been at that protest and who left their cassettes for this project. But we still have 160 hours to go through. So in that respect, the film itself, you never really know where it's going, because you might have an idea, but fundamentally it's the footage that dictates the film. And that is a long and complicated process, especially when you come to editing. With the Hong Kong film, I've made more of an effort to research beforehand, work out what it is that I want to say, therefore who I want to speak to, the kind of questions that I want to get, and as a result I've got much less footage, but I know where it's going. The limitation with that is that maybe there's something less organic about the Hong Kong film, because it doesn't have that kind of spontaneity about it that observational films do. But the advantage is, of course, that when you actually come down to sitting down and making the footage, you know where everything is, and you know basically what the relationship between the footage is, rather than having to find it as the footage suggests itself. So the answer is there's always a lot of work with everything.
Now, one of the things that is crucial for any type of journalism, but much more with documentary, is of course both neutrality and credibility. How do you get big enough names that people will notice your documentary, and how do you kind of find a true balance with voices from both sides?
Well, I think it would be fair to say that of all of the documentaries I've made, other than the film about wolves, none of them are particularly balanced. That isn't because of a lack of desire on my part. I think balanced films in which people from the institutions, from the establishment, so to speak, whatever the establishment may be, need to be given an opportunity to articulate their opinion. Of course, they're always in the media, so they're always getting their voice across anyway. But if you're going to try and tell a story to a group of people who don't really necessarily know anything about your story, then you need to cover as much ground as you can, I think, in order that people get a perspective, understand the landscape in which that story is taking place. Then they can make a more informed decision. I think that's the reason to have balance. On the other hand, with the Hong Kong film, for example, I tried hard to get people from the establishment, politicians, businessmen, and all of the key beneficiaries of the establishment, of the situation as it is now. And I think that in a way, in my defence, that's what I did, but on the other hand, it's what the film lacks. And ultimately you can say that where you put your camera, what you aim your camera at, what you are seeking to explore, reflects your subjectivity anyway. And I don't really think there's any real. I don't think anything can ever claim to be objective. On the other hand, what I do think a journalist can do is try to present as many of the perspectives as possible, and that will improve the quality of the product overall. Because I think the more that people see that perhaps in a situation where there's an inequality, the more they see that inequality in contrast with those who seek to defend the way that things are, the more actually that those people who are on the flip side, who aren't doing so well as a result of the way the system is, the more that people identify with them, and the more that they can understand their plight. The problem is if you only hear their voices in isolation, I don't think it has as much impact. That's my opinion anyway.
And what kind of advice would you give to young people who are very interested in becoming documentary makers themselves?
Well, recently I've decided that there are three things that my films generally lack and generally need. The first one is money. Money is only all that I mean by money, because I think in general, if you see film as art, and even documentary as art, as they say, you've got to suffer for your art, and I think that in a way, often you'll end up not getting paid. If you get paid, you have to work in progress, you won't get paid, certainly to begin with. But getting money, and there is money out there from funding organisations and charities and all kinds of different kind of revenue streams, getting some money so that you can buy in other people's services, like a graphic designer, say for example, is really useful. But the other two things that are really lacking from my films, that I'm now not going to make any films until I have firstly money, and the other two things are humour. It doesn't have to be that every topic is about something funny, but that I want people who can convey something that's got some comedy value, so that it's not all just like slamming someone's head against the table and telling them how bad the world is. You want to also inspire people through humour, through jokes, through anecdotes. And the last thing as well is I think that certain things do suggest drama. That isn't to say that you have to always look for the kind of the most dramatic thing, but to find something where there is either tension between people, or a dispute that's got to be resolved, or a mystery of some sort. You know what I mean? There's got to be, I think, something to, and that maintains pace. So those are the three things that I think are missing in a lot of my films, and that I'm going to seek to continue building: money, humour, and drama. That's what I think are good things to look out for.
Do you have any final comments or final thoughts for our viewers?
I do think that nowadays it's very difficult for lots of people in the fringes of the media, namely like young students who've just graduated, or people who are kind of maybe freelancing and stuff like that. I think it's a difficult circumstance, particularly in the West, where newspapers and traditional media outlets are losing readers all the time. But on the other hand, I think that's really been the case for the media for a long time. Things are much less competitive now, which is a good thing, and there's more opportunities in that respect. There possibly isn't the money, and when I say the money, I just mean it as a way for people to survive doing that work. But I do think at the same time there's more stuff to write about now, and there's more clever ways of marketing material, that if you can begin to think outside of the old way of doing things, that there is actually the potential for a beginning of a new renaissance. For example, the way in which iPad has completely helped to revolutionise the way in which people read newspapers, and newspapers have gathered revenue. So I think all I can say is that I hope that new, younger filmmakers and stuff like that can keep it going, and that the love of film and the love of journalism and the love of a desire to use those things to combat inequality, for example, can keep them going, and that we see more people coming up and bringing out new stuff.
Excellent. A good strong quotes in on there. Could you show us what you've been drawing?
Yeah, that was just a recap of what I've said. DSLR for film. I'm going to add that as the cameras that I'm into now. with changeable lenses rather than the standard thing. But outside of that, it's just a recap of what we've been talking about, really.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. This has been an episode of the Able Project here from Hong Kong. Thank you very much.